All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're gonna go over what Rolly Romero had to say about Errol Spence Jr. and the fight against the Cuban Southpaw specialist Yordenis Ugas. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're talking about the welterweight division and the best welterweight fight that we know of happening so far this year. Errol Spence Jr. versus Yordenis Ugas, which I do believe is taking place on April 16th in Arlington, Texas. Going to be an absolutely huge event. More than likely, I'm going to be there, man. May take my wife out there and see if she'll come to a fight with me. But before we get into what Rolly Romero had to say, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Also, make sure you hit that bell icon and then select all notifications so that you can get notified of when we release more videos. All right, so Rolly Romero is a Cuban Orthodox fighter from the United States that will be fighting Gervonta Tank Davis at a date that is yet to be laid out. I think his boxing analysis may be a little bit more on point than his actual boxing skill, because I don't give Rolly a snowball's chance in HE double hockey sticks of beating Gervonta Tank Davis. However, he did give some insight into the fight with Errol Spence Jr. versus Yordenis Ugas, and gave some insight that I agree with. I've said it before myself, but I think that it's definitely something that is valid that people should pay attention to going into this fight between the two of those guys. It's going to be a fight for three major championship belts: the WBA, the WBC, and the IBF. Errol Spence Jr. is a big favorite to win that fight. However, that is a fight that is most definitely something that you should watch and something you should pay attention to, because that outcome is not predetermined. I'm a big Errol Spence Jr. fan, but I'm telling you, what Rolly Romero was saying actually has some weight to it, and that is that Yordenis Ugas is a Cuban fighter who is an Orthodox fighter, and he grew up fighting pretty much exclusively Southpaws in the amateurs for the amateur tours taking place in Cuba, tournaments in Cuba. So since there's so many Southpaws in Cuba, he got very familiar with what to do against Southpaws. Now, some of the examples of guys like that are Guillermo Rigondeaux, Luis Ortiz, other guy, man, I always forget the name of the two brothers that are down there at 140 pounds, but just Cuban after Cuban after Cuban. Landy Lara is another example of it, are Southpaws, and very, very effective, slick style Southpaws. Now, here's the thing with that though. Errol Spence Jr., even though he is a Southpaw, does not fight like a Cuban Southpaw. Cuban Southpaws, from what I have seen, and somebody please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but most Cuban Southpaws are counterpunchers. They're counterpunchers like a Luis Ortiz type of counterpuncher. He will take the lead, but by and large, a counterpuncher, and they are slick, elusive fighters that like to counterpunch, right? There's a Cuban style, and being Southpaw is only part of that. Errol Spence Jr. is not a slick counterpunching Southpaw that is going to give you the amount of that is you're going to come forward on and be able to walk down like the way that Yordenis Ugas typically fights, right? So I don't know whether or not that is, and by the way, I don't think any of those Cuban Southpaws, more than likely, if that's the case, I mean, I know that's the case, are typically good if they're at that amateur level and they're in Cuba. They probably don't run into that many Orthodox fighters if they're fighting primarily Southpaws in Cuban tournaments. So unless they get to the world top level, as a Southpaw, I don't know what they're going to do when you're talking about fighting with a guy like Errol Spence Jr. that fights more of like a hybrid. I mean, to be like gross generalizations, right? More of a hybrid, like a hybrid black Mexican Southpaw type of style, right? Where he's constantly coming in behind. He's coming in behind a high guard. Number one, he's not fighting. He's not fighting he's not fighting with his hand down. He's not timing you. He's not necessarily primarily looking for counter shots. He's coming in, going forward, attacking the body, and keeping a very, very high tempo throughout the whole fight. So Yordenis Ugas, while he's probably comfortable looking at that stance and comfortable moving like certain basic aspects of fighting a southpaw, like keeping your right foot on the outside of their foot, making sure that you are, circling to your right and not your left, so that you're not running into their lead hand. He's probably more comfortable in those regards than most fighters are. But I would suspect that, guys at that top level, a lot of the people have fought southpaws and are familiar with southpaws. Now, he did beat Manny Pacquiao in his very last fight. So he did fight a southpaw in his last fight. So he is, fresh off of beating a southpaw. And I think that is probably where, his biggest, Yordenis Ugas' biggest advantages with Errol Spence Jr. is just the fact that he's been active, and Errol Spence Jr. has been inactive because of the car accident first. Then he fights Danny Garcia. Then he has another really long layoff because, he was going to fight Manny Pacquiao, but then he gets his eye injury. So that amount of layoff and stuff, I think, could work for Yordenis Ugas. But Rolly Romero was like, I'm telling you, this dude can beat this guy. But he also brings in, if it goes the distance, don't be surprised if Errol Spence Jr. gets the nod, because of the politics of it and the fact that that fight is going to be held in Dallas Stadium. And there's going to be a lot of people cheering for him, and that's where the money is. The money is with Errol Spence Jr. So, he brought up that point as well. And, that is something in boxing that is very, very real. You do have situations where, like a Canelo Alvarez, where it's going to be really tough to get a decision against Canelo Alvarez anywhere you fight him, right? But if you fight in certain people's hometowns with their hometown cheering for him and rooting for him, it is going to be a little bit more difficult for the judges to give you the benefit of the doubt when it's that local crowd is there and that guy is the money guy. But most importantly, Yordenis Ugas isn't somebody that is really going to bowl you over he's an active fighter. He attacks with the body. But that fight with Manny Pacquiao, which was, kind of, a lot of cat and mouse, a lot of figuring each other out, you're not going to get with Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence Jr. more than likely is going to really push the pace on him and make it so that, Yordenis Ugas is going to have to score more than he scores. And I don't see Yordenis Ugas stopping Errol Spence Jr., right? Or really catching him cleanly on a very, very consistent basis. But anyway, man, I just wanted to tell you what Rolly Romero had to say. I thought that was, good insights from a guy, man, that, I don't know, man. Maybe you should be fighting southpaw. Oh, man, Rolly Romero. I do not think Rolly Romero is that good a fighter. But anyway, it is what it is. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.